Hi everyone, my name's Emma. Welcome back to the Champions of Wonder podcast. Today we're going to be looking at how can we take childhood lessons and apply them to our life now and increase our productivity, our ability to deal with situations, and to just be able to look at the world with an even brighter perspective. When it comes to choices and decisions, the ones that we make with more intention will help us create the world that we want to live in. So we talk about here on this channel, how can we take what lessons we see from the world and apply them into our own lives to create the life that we want. When we go back to our childhood memories, one of our probably least favorite ones was the tests that we had to take. And these tests often involved a lot of preparation, maybe a lot of just unwillingness to take them, a lot of anxiety taking them, and even getting the scores back. But once we got those tests, we had very few things that we could do next. There's usually one of two options. We could really go into that test, see what we did wrong, go to the teacher, ask for help, go to other students, see what they did. If they got those answers right, we could see what mistakes we made. Did we pick the wrong answer, but we did know the right one? We just second-guessed ourselves. Did we believe that the way that we did it was the correct way, but there was actually a quicker way to get to the answer? There's so many different things that we can learn about ourselves if we do it, and to help us prepare for the next test. Now, the other option would be to just throw the test out and never look at it again. Now, there's really only one of two ways, right? But when we look at our own lives, we see that going with the second option is the one that we do more often than not. But if we were to think about it in the context of, well, I have to take a test again, and I have this very clear data point of this is how I took this last test, can learn something from it, and then better prepare myself for the next test. Or I could completely ignore this data point and go into this next test probably with the same mindset that I had before, not address any things that I could do better on, that I could choose to avoid next time, and, probably make the same mistakes on the next test. And then you would probably get the same grade. So why is it that it's so easy to understand that looking through this test, going to ask for help, really digging into it, figuring out what our mistakes were to prevent doing them again, makes so much sense when it comes to a test. But when it comes to almost everything else in our lives, we choose to not do that. We choose to just ignore it and move on and proceed forward. Now, when it comes to rejection, a lot of our times, when it comes to being wrong, a lot of the times, we choose to just ignore it and move forward and not really dig into the lessons that could be learned. What could we do next time? What should we avoid next time? How can we better prepare ourselves for when the situation arises? And unless we do that work, we're going to be presented with more tests, more complicated tests in life, and be facing them with the same tools that we had with the original test that we did. Not having learned from the tests that we had taken after, but making the same mistakes over and over again without applying these lessons that we could have learned if we just took a little bit of time to review, talk to somebody about it, and really figure out what would be a better approach. So how can we apply this to our own lives now? We've all been rejected from something. We've all lost either friendships or had relationships change or be lost in your life. And that is really a place where you can learn what you did, what worked, what didn't work, and how you can apply those lessons into the next relationship, job, application, finding a place to live, finding a car. You can learn from the mistakes that you made and from the stuff that you did right. Very rarely do we either get a 0 or 100 on any test. There are some things that went right and some things that went wrong. We can understand what went right and apply that and understand, this is actually a good approach. And with the stuff that goes wrong, we could say, all right, well, I tried this approach and it didn't work. Maybe if I do it this way, it would be better. Of course, we can learn only so many lessons, but they're a pretty good indication of how we're going to react in the future unless we change something. if you are presented with one question on a test and you get it wrong, and you don't look at how you could get that question right or analyze why you got it wrong, and you're presented with that exact same question a month later, you haven't created skills suddenly without doing any work to do that question any better. And we can simply understand that when it comes to any kind of test that we take. But when it comes to things like finding friendships, relationships, jobs, places to live, different ways to interact with people, we don't approach those same skills. And we could all actually benefit a great deal if we did do that. If we admit, okay, I got it wrong, but what can I learn from this? And then learn from it and move forward, we could actually change quite a bit of how our lives continue and in which direction they will. Either we're going to be presented with similar tests over and over again, and we're going to get the same questions wrong and the same questions right, or we could create a better atmosphere for us to get even more questions right. Now, another important lesson that we can take from school is that we had multiple different subjects, we had multiple different books that we learned from, different sections, and every year we learned something different. And not in any of those years were we presented with the entirety of the whole subject matter. If we took a history class, if we took an English class, if we took a physics class, we understood that this physics class wasn't going to cover physics in its entirety. Not even if you took it for 2 years, were you able to completely cover physics in all of its entirety. And we can understand that pretty easily. And, many of us probably took English classes from kindergarten to 12th grade. And we probably, in that time, learned quite a bit about English, but if you continue to read, if you continue to write, you're going to continue to learn how to excel in those skills. And this applies to the idea that not one thing that we do is going to be the entirety of our understanding of that one thing. Now, let me explain that a little bit more with any documentary that we watch, any book that we watch, anything that we look at, any show that we watch. It's not the entirety of the existence of that particular subject matter. And we cannot expect that any one thing is the entirety of that subject matter. If a documentary comes out, a documentary is a snapshot of time that captures this specific amount of subject matter within that description. It is one perspective. It is one view of the entirety of whatever that documentary is based off of, which is very important. Every perspective is vastly important, but all perspective is limited, and because of that, we need to continue to seek more and more perspectives. If the only thing that we ever did to learn about cars was to watch shows about cars, we would never really understand the depth of what a car could mean for your life. If you don't own a car, if you don't drive in a car, if you don't talk to people who have cars, if you don't look at other types of transportation, you probably won't understand the importance and value of cars to the same extent as if you only watched it in one particular medium. If you just learned about food through watching videos instead of learning about it through what do you like, what tastes are better for you. If you don't explore the depth and the range of different information available for almost anything in life, you're going to miss out very often the importance of a great deal of things. So we can understand from school that not one thing that we do is the entirety of that thing. So we cannot assume that any one friendship is the entirety of everything. That person cannot fulfill every viewpoint, every need that you will ever have in your life. That's a big expectation to have of anything, and it's unrealistic and it's unproductive. So we need to really take a step back and realize it's okay that I didn't get everything that I need from this. I got an important perspective, and I can use that, and I can learn from it, and I can continue to build on it if that is what I want to be doing. And now, another important thing that a lot of us learned was we need to be kind. We probably had a lot of talks where we were taught about bullying and why it was really bad. And we oftentimes feel that with this internet era that we are in currently, that our words don't mean as much. And it's just simply untrue. We've lost a lot of the reasoning behind being kind to each other, being nice to each other. And yes, childhood schooling system, a lot of that oftentimes isn't based in kindness, but it was a lesson that they kept trying to teach us. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but it's a lesson that we need to continue to take with us. We need to learn to be kind to ourselves and to be kind to those around us. Learn to say, you know what, this person is sharing their perspective with me, and that they are presenting facts to me. Whether those facts be true or not or otherwise, we oftentimes associate an emotion with what somebody is presenting to us in information. Somebody is telling us something, and then we add a secondary story through the lens of our past, usually, of an emotional attachment to that sort of event, some sort of response. And we need to learn that because somebody says something, it doesn't need to elicit a certain reaction out of you. People will make comments, people will say things, people will be rude, but we need to learn to combat that with this peace and understanding that this is not a reflection of who you are. This is not something that is degrading you. This is not a defining moment of who you are as a person. And I think that we're taught that a lot throughout school, that we're going to continue to learn, we're going to continue to move forward, and there's going to be times where it's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard to choose to be kind to the person who's really annoying, to be kind when the option to not be kind seems to be the better one at that moment. And we're not perfect, and if school has ever taught us anything, is that you don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep trying. You just have to keep learning and readjusting and moving forward. And that's a big part of when many of us learned to drive. We didn't know how to look at the road, control the wheel, which one's the gas, which one's the brake. We had to learn that and course correct along the way. And that is what we need to keep doing. We need to course correct everything. We need to be intaking data, intaking information, and applying that information in a realistic way. If when we were driving and our instructor said, don't hold the wheel that way, hold it this way, it's better, and we just ignored it and we were like, no, this is right because this is what I think is right, we probably wouldn't be driving very well. We would probably get into more dangerous situations than we need to if we didn't take in what others were saying. So we can choose to be kind, and we can choose to accept information from others and then analyze its purpose and choose to apply it or not. We're constantly being presented with information about others, about people, about the world, and it's up to us to understand how it fits into our lives and how effective it can be. Sometimes it can be extremely effective, sometimes it can be extremely detrimental, and that's just true for a lot of things as well. We need to realize that it's okay if we don't completely understand something right now. We're learning as we're going. When you started in kindergarten, you had no idea what you would learn by senior year of high school. But you had the hope that you would learn what you needed to in that moment, and that it would just bring you one step closer to getting you where you needed to be by the time you graduated as a senior. And there's habits that we learned, and there's moments where it was tough, and there was moments where we weren't so nice and others weren't so nice to us either. But we can either choose to let us hold us back, to let those things hold us back, or we can choose to move forward and choose to accept that it's okay, we get to keep going, we get to move forward, and at the end of the day, somebody has the option to make a better choice. We are not our choices, we are much more than that. We as individuals, we as a collective are much greater than choices, but these choices are a reflection of the world that we create. And if we are not enjoying the world that we are creating, we can choose to create another one. And we get to choose that every single time we make a choice, and we make a lot more choices than we understand. We may have felt that when we were in school, we didn't get to make a lot of choices. But the way that we learned how to deal with the few that we could make is a big foundation of the ones that we are now able to make in a vast variety of ways. But that doesn't mean that because you made certain decisions in your past and you made them in a certain way, that you have to continue to do that. If we continue to learn about the world around us, if we continue to look at the places where we were wrong, learn from them, and course correct accordingly, we will be able to create this better life, this better understanding, this better view of the world. And unless we do that, we will not be able to move forward into a direction that is positive and inclusive and understanding. And really, that's the entirety of what school has taught us, is how to course correct and apply ourselves in a way that is beneficial to us. And along the way, we will fall, and we will be questioning, and we will be upset, and we will be annoyed, and that's all part of the journey as well. But if we can take anything away from the lessons of childhood, is that everything around us is teaching us something, and none of those lessons are the entirety of that existence of that subject. And that if we have tests, if things go wrong and we choose to ignore it, just move forward, try to expunge it out of your life and not learn the lessons from it, we're going to be faced with those same problems over and over again, and we're not going to know how to deal with them any better until we do the work and figure out, well, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? And how can I adjust accordingly? We need to constantly adjust our behavior once we have new information about a better way to do something. Or if something failed, something went completely wrong, you have no idea why, start wherever you can and continue to move forward. Lessons exist all around us, whether it be through entertainment, documentaries, talking to people, our past, the lessons of what other people have done right or wrong, and to choose to adjust accordingly as this information comes into our lives. Life is not easy, and it never will be. But we don't have to make it harder for ourselves by ignoring the places that we could do better, that we could progress in if we just did a little bit of work. And whether you loved school or hated school or still in school, there's lessons to be learned from everything. And education and learning isn't something that ends when you graduate. It's something that if you do it right, you will continue to do, and the way you approach it will matter the most. If you approach learning with this disdain, if you're upset, if you're annoyed, it's not going to be fun, and it's going to make life so much more difficult. But change happens, and change will happen regardless if we want it to or not. So we can either accept change, see what we can learn from it and move forward, or we can be upset about it and not want it, and it comes anyway. So we can either prepare ourselves and accept this change and be resilient to that change, or we can fall to a place of disdain and being upset, and we don't want to be upset. We want to take control of our life through the choices we are able to make, and to import new information into our lives to make these better choices and decisions that will create a world where we are happy and fulfilled and pursuing a purpose that exists in all of us. And as long as we continue to look at the world with this wonder, with this excitement that there's so much more out there. There's so much more to learn. There's so much that this world has to offer through the people that you meet, through the places that you see, through the videos that you watch, through the entertainment that you invite into your life and accept into the world that you want to create, and that every choice you get to make is yours, and you get to choose every single day to make one that is more aligned with who you are. And you will be able to do so if you do the work, and if you're able to really hone in on what is it that I can do better in this moment, and how can I choose to be authentic to myself right here, right now, as often as I can be. And we can ask ourselves this question as little or as much as we want. and it's up to us, and it all begins with a choice. So I hope that you got something out of today's travel through time, back to childhood, back to school. And I hope that you tune in next time and that we get to continue this conversation about life and lessons in the world around us. Continue to be a champion of wonder, and tune in next time where we're really going to dive into what does Netflix have to offer in its lessons, through its shows, through its movies, and why is one of the shows in particular very important. And we're going to go into quite a few. There's so many documentaries as well. And entertainment really does offer a great deal of lessons. And over the next few weeks, we're really going to go into quite a few more. We're going to start off with the very new documentary called Seaspiracy that has been released on Netflix. And we're going to just talk about how our decisions affect the world at large. And how can we make better choices along the way to support the kind of world that we want to live in. Tune in next time. But until then, I hope that you have an amazing day.